President Biden condemned a rise in anti-Semitism during a speech he delivered yesterday at a Holocaust remembrance ceremony. The president drew a parallel between the Holocaust and the October 7th attacks by Hamas, which he said were driven by an ancient desire to wipe out the Jewish people. The president also addressed the protests across college campuses over the war in Gaza.
In America, we respect and protect the fundamental right to free speech, to debate and disagree, to protest peacefully, and make our voices heard. I understand that's America, but there is no place on any campus in America, any place in America, for anti-Semitism or hate speech or threats of violence of any kind, whether against Jews or anyone else. Violent attacks, destroying property, is not peaceful protest. It's against the law. And we are not a lawless country. We're a civil society. We uphold the rule of law. And no one should have to hide or be brave just to be themselves.
Joining us now, Democratic Congresswoman Becca Balint of Vermont. Congresswoman, so good to see you this morning. Thanks for joining us. I was in the room yesterday for that speech in a beautiful space at the U.S. Capitol. There were some Holocaust survivors there. It was a very emotional ceremony held every year. And in this time, the president also delivered these forceful remarks about anti-Semitism. What is your reaction to what he said? Do you think he went far enough?
I'm so glad that we're talking about this morning. My grandfather was killed in the Holocaust, and whenever Holocaust Remembrance Day rolls around, I always have an opportunity to reflect on how anti-Semitism has impacted my family. And so I think an important thing that came out of that speech was an acknowledgement of two truths. One, anti-Semitism is real. It is being used by people in power to sow division and fear, as it has been throughout history. And there's also a place in this country for our First Amendment rights to be used in protest of a government. And it is frustrating for me that you have voices on college campuses right now who are legitimately criticizing Netanyahu, legitimately criticizing the war in Gaza. And side by side, there are people at those same protests who are saying things that are anti-Semitic. And so we all have to be better about demanding that the rhetoric that is employed does not veer into anti-Semitic tropes.
Yeah, it's obviously so important to strike that balance. What more can college administrators do? What more can the president and the federal government do?
Well, I'm very excited and encouraged by a bipartisan, bicameral bill that has been put forward by Jackie Rosen and Senator Lankford, as well as Manning, Representative Manning and Chris Smith on the House side. What we need is an actual plan. We don't need more resolutions that are not actually achieving the goals of reducing the anti-Semitism in this country, because what we know is anti-Semitism is manufactured by people in power to sow division and fear. And although anyone can employ it, it most serves those folks who want to use division and fear to keep their power. And so what's exciting about the Rosen, Lankford, and Manning and Chris Smith bill is that it's actually looking to establish an office finally at the national level that is going to put things in place to reduce anti-Semitism on college campuses, and not just a feel-good resolution that people can get behind that doesn't actually achieve anything.
So this speech, of course, was given at a time, a precarious moment in the war in Gaza, ceasefire for hostage talks ongoing, no deal yet. And also the administration has now decided to limit some of the weapons that will go to Israel, not send some of the bigger bombs out of fear it would go to Rafah and take a toll on the civilian population there. What is your reaction to that decision by this White House?
I think it's reflecting what most Americans are actually feeling right now. In my conversations with constituents, what they say to me is, I support a safe, secure Israel, and I also need to see a course correction in this horrific offensive in Gaza. And I think one of the critical points of contention is this invasion of Rafah that Netanyahu has been threatening for many, many weeks now. And it is so crucial that we continue to be a voice that is pushing back against this administration in Israel that has been using excessive force within Gaza. And I don't I don't think ultimately it's achieving the aims that Israelis want and that we want, which is a safe, secure Israel and also a path to a two-state solution. That's what most Americans want.
And do you think, as a final question, that Prime Minister Netanyahu should be the one to be leading Israel at this moment and in that future?
I have been very outspoken that I don't think that he is the right leader for Israel. I think we have seen more and more protests, people taking to the streets saying, many voices saying he should have resigned when it first happened. It was a colossal failure of intelligence. I'm referring to October 7th, that horrible, horrible attack. And so it is not ensuring the safety and security of Israelis to continue to incite this continued violence in Gaza.
Democratic Congresswoman Becca Balint of Vermont, thank you for that this morning. We really appreciate it. We'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you.